The research ship Eternal Dawn moved slowly through the dark emptiness of space. Captain Minho stood on the bridge watching the stars through the main window. His hands were behind his back as he studied the strange readings on the screens around him. Something was wrong with this part of space. Very wrong. "Captain, we are getting closer to the target area," said Dong Yun from his station. The older man had been working on ships for 20 years. His fingers moved quickly over the control panel as he checked the engine systems. "Good. Keep our speed steady," Minho replied. He turned to look at the woman sitting at the science station. "Hana, what do your readings tell us about this place?" Hana looked up from her screen. Her dark eyes were full of worry. She had been studying the data for 3 days now and nothing made sense. "The energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever is out there, it is big, really big, and it seems to be alive." The other crew members on the bridge became quiet. They had all heard stories about the Kepler void. Ships went into this area and never came back. Some people said it was just bad luck. Others whispered about monsters that lived in the dark spaces between stars. "Are you sure it is alive?" asked Minho. He walked over to stand behind Hana's chair. "The energy patterns change like breathing. They have a rhythm. And they are getting faster as we get closer," Hana explained. She pointed to the lines moving across her screen. "See how they pulse? That is not normal for space radiation." Minho nodded slowly. He had asked for this mission because he wanted to solve the mystery of the missing ships. Earth needed to know if this area was safe for travel. But now he was starting to wonder if they had made a mistake coming here. "Sir, I am picking up something on the long-range sensors," called out Ji-young from the communication station. She was the youngest member of the crew and often got excited about new discoveries. "What kind of something?" Minho asked. "It is hard to say. The readings keep changing, but it is massive. Much bigger than our ship. Maybe bigger than a space station." Hana stood up quickly and moved to her special workstation. This was where she kept her most sensitive equipment for studying alien life forms. She had spent years learning how to find signs of life in space. Her fingers moved over the controls as she focused all her sensors on the area ahead of them. "Captain, I think we should slow down," she said after a few minutes. Her voice was tight with worry. "Whatever is out there, it knows we are coming. The energy patterns are changing to match our approach speed." Before Minho could respond, the ship began to shake. It was gentle at first, like a small earthquake. But it quickly became stronger. Coffee cups fell from tables. People grabbed onto their chairs to keep from falling. "What is happening?" Minho shouted over the noise. "Unknown gravitational force," Dong-hyun replied. His hands flew over his controls as he tried to keep the ship steady. "Something is pulling at us. I am having trouble maintaining our position." The shaking got worse. Lights flickered on and off. Warning alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Hana looked at her readings and felt her heart skip a beat. The energy patterns were no longer steady. They were spiking wildly, like an animal in pain or fear. "Captain, we need to get out of here right now," she said. "The entity is becoming agitated. I think our presence is causing it distress." "All hands prepare for emergency departure," Minho announced over the ship's communication system. "Dong-hyun, get us out of here. Full power to the engines." But as Dong-hyun tried to fire the engines, something went wrong. Instead of pushing them away from the danger, the ship lurched forward. They were being pulled deeper into the void. "Engine controls are not responding properly," Dong-hyun said. Sweat was forming on his forehead as he worked frantically at his station. "The gravitational field is too strong. It is interfering with our systems." Hana watched her screens with growing horror. The energy readings were off the scale now. Whatever lived in this part of space was enormous, and it was waking up because of their presence. "I need to get to the outer laboratory," she said suddenly. "My specialized equipment is there. Maybe I can find a way to communicate with it. If this thing is alive, maybe we can reason with it." "Too dangerous," Minho replied immediately. "The outer lab is connected to the ship by a narrow corridor. If something goes wrong, you could be trapped." "We are all trapped if we cannot find a way to calm this entity down," Hana argued. "The readings show it is confused and scared. It might stop pulling us if it understands we are not a threat." Another violent shake ran through the ship. This time, sparks flew from several control panels. The lights went out for a few seconds before the emergency power kicked in. "Go," Minho said finally, "but stay in contact with us. If things get worse, you come back immediately." Hana nodded and ran toward the corridor that led to the outer laboratory. This was a special section of the ship that stuck out from the main hull. It was designed for studying dangerous materials safely. If something went wrong, the entire lab could be separated from the ship. As she worked her way through the narrow passage, the ship continued to shake. She could hear metal groaning under stress. Behind her, she heard Minho giving orders to the crew. Everyone was working to save the ship. In the laboratory, Hana quickly set up her most advanced scanning equipment. Through the large window, she could see the void stretching out in front of them. It looked empty, but her instruments told a different story. There was something vast and ancient out there, something that had been sleeping until they arrived. She began sending out gentle energy pulses, trying to establish some kind of communication. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly the entity began to respond. The chaotic energy pattern started to form shapes that almost looked like language. "I am making contact," she called over the communication system. "It is trying to talk to me." But at that moment, the worst possible thing happened. A critical system failure occurred in the main ship. The artificial gravity failed, and then the life support systems began shutting down one by one. "Emergency evacuation procedures," Minho announced. "All crew to the escape pods immediately." Hana heard the announcement, but she was so close to understanding what the entity was trying to tell her. She could not leave now. She had to keep trying. "Hana, get back here now." Minho's voice came through her headset. "We are losing the ship." "Just give me 2 more minutes," she replied. "I think I can calm it down." But they did not have 2 minutes. The ship's main structure began to break apart. The corridor connecting the outer laboratory to the main ship started to tear away. From the bridge, Minho watched in horror as the laboratory section began to separate from the ship. He could see Hana through the window, still working at her equipment. She had not realized what was happening. "Hana, the lab is breaking away," he called desperately into his communicator. She looked up just in time to see the corridor completely separate. She was now trapped in the laboratory pod, floating free in space. Through the window, she could see the main ship moving away from her, pulled by the entity's gravitational field. Minho faced the most terrible decision of his life. He could try to rescue Hana, but that would mean risking the lives of his entire crew. The ship was barely holding together. Any delay might mean they would all die. "Captain, we have to go now," Dongyun shouted. "The engines are failing." With tears in his eyes, Minho gave the order that would haunt him forever. "Full power. Get us out of here." As the eternal dawn limped away to safety, Hana watched her friends disappear into the darkness. She was alone now, trapped in a small pod, with limited life support. Around her, the ancient entity continued to pulse with strange energy. She pressed her hand against the cold window and whispered, "Please let me live long enough to see them again." But deep in the void, something was listening. And it was very interested in the brave human who had tried to speak with it. Hana floated in the darkness for what felt like forever. Her small laboratory pod drifted through the empty space like a leaf on a calm lake. The stars around her looked different now. They seemed to bend and twist in ways that hurt her eyes to watch. The oxygen meter on her wall showed she had maybe 3 days of air left. The food supplies would last a week if she was careful. But the radiation from the void was slowly breaking down her equipment. She knew she would die long before help could arrive. She pressed her face against the cold window and looked out into the emptiness. Sometimes she thought she could see shapes moving in the darkness. Large, flowing forms that appeared and disappeared like shadows in moonlight. "Hello," she whispered to the void. "I know you are out there. I felt you before. Can you hear me now?" For a long time, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a voice began to form in her mind. It was not really a voice at all. It was more like thoughts that were not her own. appearing in her head like gentle whispers. You are the small one who tried to speak with me, the thought said. You are not afraid like the others. Hana sat up straighter in her chair. Her heart began to beat faster. You can understand me. You can think and talk. I have been thinking for longer than your kind has existed. I watched your son being born. I saw your planet form from dust and rock, but I have never spoken to one of your people before. What are you? Hana asked. She tried to keep her voice calm, but inside she was amazed. She was talking to something older than human history. I am what your people might call consciousness without form. I exist in the spaces between your reality. The void is not empty, as you believe. It is full of life, but life that is different from yours. Hana looked at her scientific instruments. They were still detecting the strange energy patterns, but now she understood what she was seeing. It was not just energy. It was a living mind, vast and ancient. Why did you pull our ship toward you? She asked. I was curious. It has been so long since anyone came to visit me. Most beings fear the void and stay away. When I sensed your ship approaching, I wanted to see what you were like. But you almost destroyed us, Hana said. I did not understand that your bodies are so fragile. I was trying to bring you closer so I could examine you better. I am sorry that I caused you harm. The thoughts in her mind felt sad and lonely. Hana realized that this ancient being had been alone for millions of years. It had watched the universe grow and change, but it had never had anyone to share its experiences with. What is your name? She asked. I do not have a name as you understand names. I am simply what I am. Hana thought for a moment. The loneliness in the entity's thoughts reminded her of her younger brother who had died in an accident when she was a child. He had always been curious about everything, just like this being seemed to be. May I call you Kyuho? She asked. It was my brother's name. He would have loved to meet someone like you. Kyuho. The thoughts repeated slowly. Yes, I would like to have a name. It makes me feel less alone. Over the next 2 days, Hana and Kyuho talked constantly. The entity told her about the wonders it had seen during its long existence. It described the birth and death of stars, the formation of galaxies, and the rise and fall of countless civilizations. In return, Hana told Kyuho about human life. She explained about families and friendships, about art and music, about love and loss. The entity was fascinated by the idea that beings could care so deeply for each other. Your people create bonds that last even after death, Kyuho observed. This is something I have never experienced. Have you never met others like yourself? Hana asked. There are others, but we rarely interact. We exist in different layers of reality. It is difficult for us to communicate with each other. Most of my kind prefer to sleep and dream rather than stay awake and watch the universe. As they talked, Hana began to feel weaker. The radiation was making her sick, and her food supplies were running low. Her equipment was breaking down one piece at a time. She knew she did not have much time left. I am dying, she told Kyuho on the 3rd day. My body cannot survive in this environment much longer. I know, Kyuho replied sadly. I can sense your life force growing weaker. I wish I could help you, but I do not understand how physical bodies work. Hana closed her eyes and leaned back in her chair. She thought about Captain Minho and the rest of her crew. She hoped they had made it back to Earth safely. She hoped they would tell her story and remember her kindly. Wait, Kyuho's thoughts suddenly became excited. There might be a way. I cannot heal your body, but I could offer you a different kind of existence. What do you mean? Hana asked. Your consciousness, your mind, your soul, if you will, could join with mine. You would not have a physical body anymore, but you would continue to exist. You would be able to see and experience things that no human has ever seen. Hana considered this carefully. It would mean giving up her humanity, but it would also mean survival. And it would mean that Kyuho would no longer be alone. What would happen to me? Would I still be me? You would still be Hana, but you would also be more than Hana. You would have abilities that physical beings cannot possess. You would be able to move through dimensions to manipulate matter and energy, to travel instantly across vast distances. And I would be able to return to my people someday? Yes, though you would be very different from what you are now. Hana thought about her crew members who had left her behind. She felt anger rising in her chest. They had abandoned her to save themselves. If she accepted Kyuho's offer, she would have the power to find them again. She would have the power to make them understand what they had done. I accept, she said firmly. Are you certain? Once this begins, there will be no going back to your old life. My old life is already over, Hana replied. I choose to live, even if it means becoming something new. Kyuho's presence in her mind grew stronger. She felt energy flowing through her body, changing her at the most basic level. Her vision began to shift and expand. She could suddenly see layers of reality that had been invisible before. The transformation was not painful, but it was overwhelming. She felt her consciousness expanding beyond the confines of her physical body. She could sense the vast network of energy that connected all things in the universe. When it was finished, Hana opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They appeared normal, but she could feel the power flowing through them. She was no longer just human. She was something entirely new. Welcome to your new existence, Kyuho said. We are no longer alone. Hana smiled and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her former crew members thought she was dead. But she was very much alive, and she was learning to use abilities they could never imagine. Soon she would pay them a visit. Soon they would understand that abandoning her had been a terrible mistake. 3 months had passed since the Eternal Dawn had escaped from the Kepler void. The salvage ship Lucky Strike moved carefully through the same dangerous area, searching for any trace of the lost research vessel. Captain Jisoo stood at the helm, watching her instruments carefully. She was known throughout the fleet for taking risks that other captains would never consider. Her crew trusted her completely, especially her first officer Taewon, who had served with her for 5 years. Captain, I am picking up a signal, called out Minsu from the communication station. It is weak, but it matches the emergency beacon from the Eternal Dawn. Finally, Jisoo said with satisfaction. The families of those crew members deserve to know what happened to their loved ones. Even if all we find are bodies, it will give them closure. Signal is coming from coordinates 847 by 221, Taewon reported. There appears to be a small object drifting in space. It looks like some kind of pod or escape module. Jisoo felt her heart beat faster. Could there be survivors? After 3 months in the void? Taewon shook his head. The life support systems in those pods were not designed for long-term survival. But we should check anyway. The Lucky Strike approached the drifting laboratory pod slowly. Through the main window they could see that it was badly damaged. The outer hull was cracked in several places, and the solar panels were completely destroyed. No signs of life, reported Hyejin from the medical station. But the pod's emergency beacon is still functioning. Someone might have survived long enough to activate it. Bring us alongside, Jisoo ordered. Taewon, prepare the docking tube. We are going aboard. Within an hour, they had connected their ship to the damaged pod. Jisoo and Taewon put on their spacesuits and entered the airlock. They expected to find a frozen corpse, but what they discovered instead changed everything they thought they knew about human limits. The pod's interior was dark and cold, but not as cold as it should have been after 3 months in space. And sitting in the pilot's chair, very much alive, was a young woman with long black hair. Hello, she said calmly, as if she had been expecting them. I am Hana. I have been waiting for you. Jisoo and Taewon stared at her in shock. The woman appeared to be completely healthy, despite the fact that she should have died weeks ago. But there was something strange about her eyes. They seemed to hold depths that went on forever, like looking into deep space itself. How are you alive? Taewon asked. The life support systems in this pod failed months ago. Hana smiled, and when she did, her form seemed to flicker slightly, as if she was not entirely solid. I learned to live without them. The void taught me many things during our time together. The void? Jisoo asked. What do you mean? The entity that lives in this region of space. It has been alone for so long. We became friends, and then we became something more. Hana stood up from her chair, and as she did, she seemed to phase, in and out of visibility. Taewon reached for his weapon, but Jisoo held up her hand to stop him. What exactly are you? She asked. I am still human, Hana replied. But I am also something else now. I exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. I can see things that you cannot see, and I can do things that you cannot do. To demonstrate, she reached out and touched the pod's broken control panel. Energy flowed from her fingers, and the dead instrument suddenly came to life. Lights began flashing, and the temperature in the small space started to rise. Impossible, Taewon whispered. Many things are possible when you learn to work with the forces that exist between realities, Hana said. But we do not have time for a long explanation. There are ships approaching this area, and they are not friendly. What ships? Jisoo asked. Our sensors are not showing anything. Hana closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, they glowed with a faint blue light. The Neth Hunters. They track beings like me and capture them for use as weapons. They detected the energy signature from my transformation, and they are coming to investigate. Neth Hunters? Jisoo had never heard of such things. What are you talking about? An alien race that has built their empire by enslaving void entities. They use us to power their weapons and their ships. They have been doing this for thousands of years. Before Jisoo could ask more questions, alarms began sounding throughout the Lucky Strike. Minsu's voice came over the communication system, filled with panic. Captain, we have multiple unknown ships approaching fast. They just appeared out of nowhere. Their weapons are charging. Get back to the ship, Jisoo ordered Taewon. Prepare for combat. No, Hana said firmly. Your weapons will not work against Neth technology, but I can stop them. She stepped toward the docking tube, but instead of walking through it normally, she seemed to flow like water. One moment she was in the pod, and the next moment she was standing on the bridge of the Lucky Strike. The crew stared at her in amazement and fear. Through the main window, they could see 5 large alien ships surrounding them. The vessels were dark and angular, with strange energy fields flowing around their hulls. Those are Neth warships, Hana explained. They hunt void entities across the galaxy. They must have detected the energy from my transformation and come to capture me. Can you really stop them? Jisoo asked. Hana nodded. Watch and learn what humans can become when they refuse to give up. She raised her hands, and the space around the Lucky Strike began to bend and twist. The attacking ships fired their weapons, but instead of hitting their target, the energy beams curved away and disappeared into dimensional rifts that Hana had opened. Then she went on the attack. She reached out with her mind and grabbed one of the Neth ships. The massive vessel, which was easily 10 times larger than the Lucky Strike, began to crumple like paper in her mental grip. Surrender now and I will let you live, she broadcast to the alien ships. Continue to attack and I will send you all to a dimension where time moves backward and you will experience your deaths forever. The Neth ships tried to retreat, but Hana was not finished with them. She opened rifts in space and redirected their own weapons back at them. 3 of the ships were destroyed instantly. The remaining 2 managed to escape by jumping into hyperspace. When the battle was over, Hana turned to face the stunned crew of the Lucky Strike. The galaxy is not as safe as your people believe, she said. There are predators out there who see humans as nothing more than resources to be harvested. But they made a mistake when they decided to hunt me. What will you do now? Jisoo asked. Hana looked out at the stars and her expression became hard and determined. I am going to find every void entity that the Neth have enslaved and I am going to set them free. Then I am going to teach these hunters what it means to face an angry human who has nothing left to lose. She paused and looked back at the crew. But first, I have some old friends to visit. The crew of the Eternal Dawn left me here to die. It is time they learned that their actions have consequences. Taewon stepped forward. They were trying to save their ship. They probably thought you were already dead. Hana's eyes flashed with anger. They never even tried to rescue me, They ran away the moment things became dangerous. Captain Minho made his choice, and now he will live with the results of that choice. What are you planning to do? Jisoo asked nervously. Nothing that will permanently harm them, Hana replied. But they need to understand what they have unleashed. When you abandon someone in the void, you cannot predict what they might become. She began to fade from view, her form becoming translucent. Thank you for coming to look for me. It shows that not all humans are cowards. When the war with the Neth begins, I will remember your kindness. War? Jisoo called out, but Hana was already gone, vanished into the spaces between dimensions. The crew of the Lucky Strike stood in silence for several minutes, trying to process what they had witnessed. Finally, Taewon spoke. Captain, should we report this to Fleet Command? Jisoo thought carefully before answering. We will report that we found evidence of alien hunters in this sector. As for the woman, I think we should keep that information to ourselves for now. I have a feeling that Hana is going to change everything, and when she does, we want to be on her good side. Captain Minho sat in his quarters aboard the Eternal Dawn, staring at the report he had written about their mission to the Kepler Void. For 3 months, he had been trying to find the right words to explain what had happened to Hana. Every time he started writing, he felt the weight of his decision crushing down on him. The door to his room opened and Dong-Yun walked in. The older engineer looked tired and worried. Captain, you need to see this. We are receiving strange reports from across the galaxy. What kind of reports? Minho asked, grateful for the distraction from his guilt. Ships disappearing, alien mining stations being destroyed, and something about freed void entities attacking their captors. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency meeting. Minho felt a chill run down his spine. Void entities, are you sure? According to the reports, someone or something has been liberating captured void beings and turning them into weapons against their former masters. The Axel Consortium has lost 12 mining facilities in the past month. Before Minho could respond, the ship's communication system activated. The bridge officer's voice sounded panicked. Captain, please report to the bridge immediately. We have an unidentified contact approaching at impossible speed. Minho and Dong-Hyun rushed to the bridge. Through the main window, they could see a figure floating in space without any kind of protection suit. It appeared to be a woman with long black hair, and she was moving toward their ship as if she was swimming through the vacuum. That is impossible, whispered Ji-young from her station. Nothing can survive in open space like that. But Minho recognized the figure immediately. His heart nearly stopped beating. Hana, he said quietly. The woman outside their ship raised her hand, and suddenly she was standing on their bridge. She had not used the airlock or any kind of transport beam. She had simply appeared, as if space itself had delivered her to them. Hello, Minho, she said calmly. We need to talk. The bridge crew stared at her in shock. She looked exactly like the Hana they remembered, but there was something different about her. Her eyes seemed to hold the depth of entire galaxies, and energy crackled around her like controlled lightning. You are supposed to be dead, Minho said. We left you in the void 3 months ago. You abandoned me, Hana corrected him, but the void did not let me die. Instead, it made me into something new, something powerful enough to change the balance of the entire galaxy. How is this possible? Asked Dong-Yun. Hana smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I merged my consciousness with a void entity named Kyuho. Together, we have been learning about the true nature of this universe. Did you know that there are thousands of beings like Kyuho scattered throughout space? And did you know that most of them have been captured and enslaved by alien civilizations? Enslaved? Minho asked. The Axel Consortium has built their entire empire on the backs of captured void entities. They use them to power their weapons, their ships, and their space stations. These ancient beings are treated like batteries, drained of their energy until they die. Hana walked over to the main console and placed her hand on it. Immediately, all the ship's systems began displaying information that should have been classified. Star maps, military reports, and intelligence briefings appeared on every screen. I have been freeing these enslaved entities one by one, she continued. Each time I liberate a void being, it joins my cause. We are building an army that will put an end to this cosmic slavery once and for all. What does this have to do with us? Ji-young asked nervously. Hana turned to look at her, and the young woman stepped back in fear. Humanity is about to become a target. The Axel Consortium has declared that any species associated with void entities must be eliminated. They are preparing to attack Earth. That is impossible, Minho said. Earth's defenses are strong. We have the most advanced fleet in this sector of the galaxy. Your fleet is powerful against normal enemies, Hana agreed. But the Axel Consortium uses enslaved void entities as weapons. They can bend space and time, create black holes, and destroy entire planets with a thought. Earth's conventional weapons will be useless against such power. The bridge fell silent as the crew tried to process this information. Finally, Minho spoke. What do you want from us? I want you to help me prevent a war that will destroy both Earth and countless other worlds. The only way to stop the Axel Consortium is to free all the void entities they have enslaved. Once these beings are liberated, the Consortium's empire will collapse. And if we refuse to help you? Minho asked. Hana's expression became cold. Then you will face the same fate that you left me to face in the void. Abandonment and death. Dong-yun stepped forward. We did not abandon you by choice. The ship was breaking apart. If we had stayed to rescue you, we all would have died. But you did not even try, Hana replied. You wrote me off as lost and ran away to save yourselves. That decision changed everything. If you had shown even a little courage, I might still be human. Instead, I became something that your enemies should fear. She moved to the center of the bridge and raised her hands. The space around them began to shift and change. Suddenly, they were no longer inside their ship. They were floating in a vast chamber that seemed to exist between dimensions. All around them, massive shapes moved in the darkness. These were the void entities that Hana had freed from their captors. Each one was enormous, easily the size of a space station. Their thoughts created colors that danced through the air like aurora. This is my army, Hana announced. 57 void entities, each one older than your entire civilization. They have agreed to follow me because I gave them something they had lost, freedom. One of the entities, larger than the others, moved closer to them. Its thoughts formed words that echoed in their minds. Greetings, small ones. I am Seijin, first among the liberated. The hybrid Hana has shown us that some physical beings can be trusted. We hope that you will prove worthy of that trust. Minho looked around at the incredible beings surrounding them. What do you need us to do? The Axel Consortium has a secret facility called Void's End, Hana explained. It is hidden in the Orion Nebula, and it contains over 300 enslaved void entities. If we can free them all at once, we will have enough power to end this war before it truly begins. But the facility will be heavily defended, Dong-yun pointed out. Yes, which is why I need ships like yours to create a distraction while I infiltrate the prison. The Consortium's forces will focus on fighting your fleet while I phase into their facility undetected. Minho considered her proposal carefully. It was incredibly dangerous, but if Hana was right about the threat to Earth, they had no choice but to act. How do we know you will not betray us once you get what you want? He asked. Hana's expression softened slightly. Because despite everything that has happened between us, you are still my people. I may no longer be fully human, but I remember what it means to protect the ones you care about. She gestured, and they found themselves back on the bridge of their ship. I will give you 24 hours to decide. Contact Fleet Command if you must, but remember that time is running out. The Axel Consortium's attack fleet is already moving toward Earth. How do you know that? Minho asked. Because I can sense the enslaved void entities powering their ships. They are crying out in pain with every jump through hyperspace. The sound of their suffering is like a constant scream in my mind. Hana began to fade from view. I will return tomorrow for your answer. I hope you make the right choice this time, Minho. The fate of 2 galaxies may depend on it. After she disappeared, the bridge crew stood in stunned silence. Finally, Ji-young spoke up. Captain, do you think she was telling the truth about the attack on Earth? Minho walked over to his command chair and sat down heavily. I think we are about to find out. Get me a secure channel to Fleet Command. We need to warn them about what is coming. As the crew began working frantically to contact Earth, none of them noticed the small smile that crossed Donghyun's face. The old engineer had made his own decision about whose side he was on, and it was not the same choice that his captain was about to make. The space around Earth filled with the largest battle fleet humanity had ever assembled. Admiral Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the flagship Defender of Earth, watching his screens with growing concern. Intelligence reports suggested that an alien armada was approaching, but nobody knew exactly when they would arrive or how powerful they would be. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from Captain Minho aboard the Eternal Dawn, reported Lieutenant Bora from the communications station. Put him through, Ji-hoon ordered. Minho's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired and worried. Admiral, I have critical information about the approaching enemy fleet. They are using enslaved void entities as weapons. Our conventional forces will not be effective against them. Explain, Ji-hoon said simply. The Axel Consortium has the ability to manipulate space and time itself. They can create black holes, bend gravity, and phase through our shields. We need to evacuate Earth immediately. Before Ji-hoon could respond, warning alarms began sounding. Throughout the fleet, massive shapes were appearing at the edge of the solar system. The enemy had arrived. Through the viewports, they could see ships that defied all understanding of physics. They were built from materials that seemed to absorb light, and energy fields surrounded them like living things. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. All ships, battle stations, Ji-hoon commanded. Prepare to defend Earth at all costs. But as the human fleet moved to intercept the invaders, something unexpected happened. Space itself began to tear open like fabric, and through the rifts came an army unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Void entities emerged from the dimensional portals, each one the size of a battleship. Their forms shifted and flowed like liquid, starlight. And leading them was a figure that the crew of the Eternal Dawn recognized immediately. Hana appeared on the bridge of the Defender of Earth without warning. She was no longer trying to appear fully human. Energy crackled around her body and her eyes glowed with the light of distant galaxies. Admiral Ji-hoon, she said calmly, I am here to help defend my people. Who are you? Ji-hoon demanded, reaching for his weapon. I am Hana, formerly of the research vessel Eternal Dawn. I am also the liberator of void entities and the enemy of those who would enslave conscious beings. Admiral Ji-hoon had read the classified reports about the mysterious figure who had been freeing alien prisoners across the galaxy. You are the one they call the Void Empress. I never chose that title, but I will accept it if it helps my people survive this day. Through the main window, they could see the battle beginning. The Axel Consortium ships were firing weapons that bent space around them. Human vessels that were hit simply disappeared, folded into dimensional pockets where they would drift forever in empty darkness. But Hana's void entity allies were fighting back with equal power. They created barriers of twisted space that deflected the enemy attacks. They opened portals that redirected the consortium's weapons back at their own ships. Your people are brave, but they are outmatched, Hana told the admiral. The consortium has been using enslaved void entities for thousands of years. They have perfected the art of cosmic warfare. Then how do we win? Ji-hoon asked. We changed the rules of the game. Hana raised her hands, and suddenly every human ship in the fleet was surrounded by a protective field of energy. The consortium's reality-bending weapons could no longer touch them. I am creating a safe zone around your forces, she explained. But this is only temporary. The real battle must be won in a different way. She gestured toward the largest of the enemy ships, a massive fortress that seemed to be coordinating the attack. That vessel contains the enslaved void entity that powers their entire fleet. If I can free it, their advantage will disappear. How? Do you plan to get aboard that ship? Bora asked. Hana smiled. The same way I got aboard yours. She began to fade from view. But before she disappeared completely, she turned to Admiral Jihoon. If I do not return from this mission, remember that humanity's greatest strength is not its weapons or its technology. It is the willingness to risk everything for others, even when those others are different from yourselves. Then she was gone, phasing through dimensions toward the enemy flagship. Inside the Axel Consortium command ship, General Norak received reports of the battle with growing frustration. His forces should have destroyed the human fleet within minutes, but somehow the primitives were holding their own. "Sir, we are detecting an intruder aboard the ship," his aide reported. "Someone has bypassed all our security systems." "Impossible," Norak growled. "Deploy all internal defenses, find this intruder and eliminate them." But Hana was already moving through the ship's corridors like a ghost. She could phase through walls, step between dimensions, and become invisible to their sensors. The consortium soldiers fired their weapons at empty air while she walked past, them unseen. At the heart of the ship, she found what she was looking for. In a massive chamber filled with crystalline technology, a void entity was held prisoner. The ancient being was connected to the ship's systems by thousands of energy cables that drained its power continuously. The entity's name was Kiwan, and it had been enslaved for over 2,000 years. When Hana appeared before it, the being's thoughts were filled with pain and despair. "Who are you, small one?" Kiwan asked weakly. "I am Hana, and I am here to set you free." "Freedom is not possible. I am bound by chains that exist in multiple dimensions. Even if you could break them, I am too weak to escape. Then I will give you strength." Hana placed her hands on the crystalline restraints and began channeling her own energy into them. The chains began to crack and break apart. With each broken link, Kiwan grew stronger. Alarms sounded throughout the ship as the crew realized what was happening. Without Kiwan's power, their weapons began to fail. Their dimensional engines shut down. Their reality-bending defenses collapsed. "You are like me," Kiwan said in wonder. "Part physical, part void. How is this possible?" "I chose to become something new rather than accept death," Hana replied. "And now I offer you the same choice. Join with me and my allies. Help us build a future where no conscious being is enslaved." The last of the crystalline chains shattered, and Kiwan was finally free. The ancient entity rose from its prison, and its joy shook the entire ship. "I accept your offer, Hybrid One. Let us show these slavers what happens when they anger the void itself." Together, Hana and Kiwan reached out with their combined power and began freeing every enslaved void entity in the consortium fleet. One by one, the alien ships lost their power and began drifting helplessly in space. Back on the human flagship, Admiral Jihoon watched in amazement as the enemy fleet simply stopped fighting. Their weapons went silent, their engines died, and their ships began broadcasting surrender signals. "What happened?" Lieutenant Bora asked. "The Void Empress succeeded," Jihoon replied. "She freed their power source." Hana appeared on the bridge. Again, but this time she was not alone. Floating beside her was a massive void entity whose presence filled the room with calm energy. "The battle is over," she announced. "The Axel Consortium's empire has fallen. Without their enslaved void entities, they have no power to continue their conquest." "What happens now?" Admiral Jihoon asked. "Now we build something better. I am creating a sanctuary in the